I have always read about how it was good to journal, and so I started journaling. I am during this COVID-19 pandemic that's going on. It's giving me an opportunity to really slow down and really take a look at what has been, what is really important. And so, in my effort to actually put all that stuff down, I decided, you know what? I usually have a lot of thoughts each day, and I'm like, I just kind of journal all of this, all right? And I've had also a lot of experiences that I thought, there are a lot of things that I see that I agree with or I don't agree with. So I kind of started journaling. So I started taking this and I jot all my thoughts in here and everything else, and decided, somebody might be able to benefit from some of my thoughts. So I'm going to try to be as honest as possible and try and be as transparent as possible, knowing a couple of different things. First of all, I've come to realize how there's some mean people out there, and I'm not just saying that. I know that a lot of people are thinking, man, what is wrong with people sometimes these days? And I'm just trying to kind of understand it, where all of this stuff is kind of coming from. Now, I don't have all the answers, and I will not have all the answers. These are just my thoughts. So I know one of the key things that when I do something like this is that you are going to have people that are going to throw arrows at you, and people are going to say mean things, and they're going to do all of that kind of stuff. But you know what? I've decided I am just not going to be afraid of all the meanness that is going on out there today. So this is my little journal, and I keep everything in here. I do all kinds of things. I read books. Whatever I do, I try to put it in here, or some quotes. All right, here's a quote, for example, that I found in one of as I was going through some of my text. Most of you probably know I'm a truly African American, and so things that have to do with Africa and that type of thing are really of interest to me. So, and the quote is, Africans are no more corrupt than everybody else, but the system is weak and allows for corruption. And I start to see that, and I'm thinking, you know what, that's really super true, because today, we see all kinds of stuff that's going on, the corruption that's in place. It's just amazing. But yet we can point to all African, when I look at African leaders, they're just all out. I mean, there's a lot of corruption that goes on in there. Right? But I think theirs is just more transparent than ours. There's not as sophisticated also. Ours here in the States, we bury it in all kinds of, laws or whatever it is, Anyway, another one I came across was, this has to deal more with evangelicals, because I've been really struggling with this idea of evangelicals. I considered myself an evangelical, but I don't know if I'd call myself that anymore, just because of what I have seen. Yesterday, one of the things that I did was I went through and I unfriended a bunch of people on my Facebook posts. On my Facebook, for everybody that I unpost, I write them to tell them why I'm unfriending them. And you know what? And I didn't really consciously go out to do this and that. I just figured, these are people that sometimes I just get really tired. It's like they're just not open to anything. For example, whenever, anyway, so I'm just like, you know what? There's something wrong with that. When you call yourself evangelical and you consider that we're supposed to, God says we're supposed to love everybody, we're supposed to welcome the stranger and all of these other things, and I don't really want to get into that issue now, but that's something that I may deal with later on. There's an issue that I may deal with later on, but for right now, here is something that, a quote that I found very interesting. Virtuous ends do not justify vicious means. I thought that was pretty cool. And the author goes on to say, the view that good policy can redeem immoral acts treats a policy statement as a form of baptism. All right, I really looked at that particular statement, and a lot of my evangelical friends that I see out there, I'm wondering how in the world Can you hold some of the views that you do? I just don't understand it. All right. So I went through, and one of my friends that I unfriended and stuff, I started talking to him. I actually sent him a thing. I said, you know what, look, I've been following you for a long time. We've been good friends and so on, but I'm going to have to unfriend you because I just can't take it. I just can't take your stuff anymore. Okay? It just spews nothing but hate. Right? And I don't have any room for that. I just don't want that in my life. All right? And so, of course, the normal things that you get accused of being closed-minded, you're accused of being a liberal, you get accused of all of these different things. But what I'm basically saying is, look, why should I be friends with you when I don't feel comfortable in going places with you that if somebody were to attack me, you would not protect me? It doesn't make any sense to me. So what kind of friendship is that? To me, it seems pretty superficial. So I unfriended him. Anyway, so I have a number of different issues that I've really been looking at. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? There's something just not quite right. And so in these podcasts, what I'm looking for is and we call our podcast Divergent Voices. I'm looking for different voices that are going to come in and they're going to actually give us a different view, because not everybody's strictly right or left, or Christian or non-Christian, or, people are different. And people come from different cultures. One culture, who's to say, when I look at colonialism in Africa, for example, at least in Nigeria, we're still fighting the mentality of colonialism. Now, I don't think most people would understand that if you haven't been there. But in this podcast, we'll explore that issue. That's something that I think that people do not realize, and you cannot blame them for not realizing it because you've never really thought about it, come face to face with it. So a lot of those kinds of things I want to take a look at. There's also what is called the outsider syndrome that I think was very interesting. I read a little bit about that. It's when you feel like you don't really belong. Right? If you take myself, for example, I don't really feel like I belong in any one place. I'm not truly Nigerian, but I'm not truly American either. So what am I? And why does that even matter? So I don't really know what the answers are to these. And I'm sure there's some brilliant minds out there that have done some research and have come up with different ways of saying, you know what, this is so on. I don't know. I do want to bring the conversation to bear. I want to bring it out so there are people that feel like I do. And we want to try and bring that out a little bit. There's so many other issues. So in this book, I have so many issues. I have so many notes that are in here. Right now, I am in the process of reading a book, a Nelson Mandela book. This book right here, because you know what? I think that he's fascinating. I think he's been extremely fascinating in his life and the way that he carried himself and some of his beliefs. And so I want to learn a little bit more about people like that really stood out. And another book I read over the summer, and I have basically told a bunch of people this is a critical book, is the book called Ishmael. Okay, Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. I'm not even going to begin to try to explain this book to you. Okay, it is really, really strange. All I'm going to tell you is if you decide you're going to read this book, you need to read it from beginning to end. It's a weird kind of a book at the very beginning, but you get where the author is going with this, and it changes my whole perspective about what is going on. So I have spent a lot of time thinking to myself, all right, how are we going to do this podcast thing, and I will also make it a video cast. How am I going to do this over a period of time and stuff? And you try and get things right, and so I decided, you know what, I'm just going to do it. Okay, and I'm just going to let the arrows fall where they may, and I will try and post at least once a week. Bring different guests on, and if you have any suggestions on any guests that you would like to see appear on the show, or actually you want us to interview, I would be more than happy to do that. And I may call on some of you to come on the show also, just to talk about things. All right. One last thing before I go. I have this book right here, this file folder that I have. These are my dad's diary. Okay, from way back when. You can see it right there. Way back when, he actually wrote down all of his thoughts and so on. And so this is my first time. All right, here I am, a grown kid. My dad died when I was a freshman and when I was a sophomore in high school. Okay, and my dad was a theologian and wrote all these books. This is his picture right here. You can see that. All right, that's him, and this is his little book I think this was actually one of his dissertation or whatever that he wrote. He had a PhD in theology and so on, all right? And so I've been reading little things like this by what he writes. He writes about African culture, revolution, and the Christian faith, and he did a lot of different things. And so he wrote a lot of, back in the day, he has diaries. This is an old diary of his with everything that he wrote. Wherever he went, he would try to jot down little notes and so on. And so I have been going through these, fascinating, absolutely fascinating, the things that he's been through and some of the things he says. There's a statement in here that I want to really discuss. And in it, he talks about, he called them Negroes. Okay? Remember, he was an African that came to the United States to do his PhD. So he comes here, and what I can gather, he's watching the news, because he used to watch the 6 o'clock news every single day, religiously, right? And there was a riot. We lived in Dallas, Texas, and there was a riot where it was a racial beating of a black person. And he discusses this in here. And his statement back then, this would have been probably early 70s. His comment in here is very revealing, and I'm looking at it, and the comment had something to do with the fact that police brutality on African Americans, when is it going to stop? And I'm thinking to myself, this was back in 1972. What has really changed today? I will go through some of the experience that I've had. I have had a very tumultuous year. And I will go over that. I will talk about that a little bit not because of any reason, not because I want to demonize anybody, not because I want people to feel bad or to say, wow, or whatever it is that I've been through, but because I think we need to change. I think it is time to stand up and say, look, enough is enough. So we're going to have some really hard discussions, really tough discussions with this. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for honesty. We are searching to find the truth, no matter where it might lead. I want this to be an honest discussion. I don't want it to be a shouting match. But I really want, and again, remember, I am not an expert, but I would like to share some of my views, and thanks to technology, we are able to do this. So, if you haven't subscribed to our Divergent Voices podcast, please do so. Go on Facebook, and I think you are going to be able to find a link to it, and we'll see where we go from there. Thank you.